Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining our Classroom to Career on this first Wednesday of November. With us today, we have Dairy Max doing a presentation on dietitian. Danielle is going to be our main speaker. I'd like to take a minute to introduce them both. First of all, my name is Susan. I'm with the Texas Restaurant Association. This is part of our Classroom to Career series. And we have Danielle Butbul. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, that's
and
great.
Also Gretchen Crichton with Dairy Max. Gretchen has spent most of her life in the food service business. She started out with McDonald's in marketing, graduated from college in San Marcos, and retired from McDonald's as director of marketing, and has found her way back to the food service industry through Dairy Max. She currently lives in, I think it's Capel, Texas, and volunteers at her community garden. So thank you for joining us, Gretchen. Also, the person who's going to lead our presentation today is Danielle Butbul. She is the program coordinator and health and wellness of Dairy Max. She caught the nutrition bug when it transformed her diet and discovered what a positive impact it can have on your physical and emotional health. She started volunteering on farms, included 6 months living on a dairy farm to better understand the intersection of human nutrition and modern U.S. food system in our environment. She now lives in Denver and is on the executive board for the Colorado Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. So would like to welcome them both and let you know that Danielle is going to define what a dietitian is. So this Classroom to Career series is all about all the different career paths that you can find as you're studying your culinary arts and restaurant management in high school, and just, you know, where these paths can lead. It's difficult to decide what I want to be for the rest of my life when I'm 15 and 16 years old. So listen to the paths carefully and learn from them as you make your decisions. She's going to provide an overview of the various fields of dietitians and will share an academic and professional requirements to earn this credential. Danielle will provide resources and will be answering any questions that come up during the presentation. If you do have questions, please just put them into the chat box and we'll get to them as they come up, or if it's more appropriate, we'll just save them all for the end and we'll see what's going on there. So sit back and enjoy, and I will turn the presentation over to Danielle now.
Okay, thank you so much, Susan. I appreciate the introduction. So like Susan mentioned, my name is Danielle, and I'm a registered dietitian. I'm really glad to be here with you all today. So first, I think that it's important to start off with sharing what is a registered dietitian. A lot of people don't necessarily know what they are. People call us nutritionists, they call us food snobs, they kind of call us everything in between. So a registered dietitian is a food and nutrition expert, and our main goal is to translate the science of nutrition into practical solutions for healthy living. So we really are here to help people make positive life changes that are unique to their health goals and their lifestyles. Registered dietitians work in a wide variety of settings. When I went into dietetics, I honestly had no idea how many different roles there are for this profession. And when I talked to a lot of my dietitian friends, they also didn't know. So I'm really happy to be here today to give you some examples of different areas in the work that, or the areas that we work in. And to hopefully broaden your horizons around what you can do in this field if it is something that you're interested in. So one of the areas that we work in is community and public health clinics. So in this area, in the community and in public health, we really teach, monitor, and advise the public on ways to improve their quality of life through healthy eating habits. So examples are local and state and national level public health departments, also working in programs that are supported through public health initiatives, something like Cooking Matters, where they go out into the community and they teach people how to shop, how to use their dollars effectively, how to find groceries that are good for themselves and their families and make the most of their money. One example is Cooking Matters. There's also a lot of federally supported food assistance programs like food stamps or supplemental nutrition assistance programs. There's another program that helps women, infants, and children get food called WIC. So dietitians are really active in those areas and really making food more accessible to people. Dietitians also work in hospitals and other healthcare facilities, mostly clinical, or these types of clinical settings. And this is what most people think about when they think about dietitians. And in these types of clinical settings, they educate patients about nutrition, and it's very much medical nutrition therapy that's part of an overall healthcare team. So they really, a lot of it is focused on different chronic diseases that people might have, and helping them work a diet that fits for their needs to manage those diseases. Within hospitals and nursing homes, dietitians might also manage food service operations in these settings. Dietitians are also in schools, so this is all the way from daycare and elementary through universities. A lot of dietitians in these settings manage food service operations similar to what they might do in a hospital, and they oversee everything from food purchasing, menu planning, making sure that menus are labeled appropriately if they have certain allergens or if they fit specialty diets like kosher, halal, vegetarian, and they also manage the staff. In universities, dietitians oftentimes also provide nutrition consultation services for students. So they help students navigate food allergies on campus or deal with other issues that they might be having that are related to food and eating, things like eating disorders or just weight management and things of that sort. A big area of schools for dietitians is also academia. So teaching and doing research. Nutrition is actually a pretty new field, relatively speaking, in the world of science. So there's just tons to discover about micronutrients and how food is absorbed in the body and how it all interacts with each other, and then also about how we interact with food. So there's a lot of research going on around food and nutrition, and that's a really big area that dietitians work in as well. Dietitians also work in fitness centers. So that's really educating clients about the connection between food, fitness, and health. And this is usually in a one-on-one counseling session. And they work around the specific goals that they might have. So a lot of it is around weight loss or building muscle and things of that sort. The food industry and nutrition-related business is another area that dietitians work in. So working in communications, consumer insights, public relations, marketing, and branding. So Gretchen could probably attest to this as well, but dietitians can work in-house or for a firm that does PR and marketing for different food businesses. And this is because dietitians know food so well. They know what consumers are interested in and what types of concerns they have when they're going to the grocery store. So they can have those types of role. And dietitians can also work with chefs and food scientists to help consult about what products food companies should make, what R&D they should be doing to create new products that are available to people in the grocery stores. Another really interesting area is making sure that the labels that we see on foods in the grocery stores, that those are all accurate and that any health claims are accurate as well. So dietitians are trained to look for those types of things. And I would say that this food industry and the public relations and communications around food, this is really a growing field. So it's not necessarily something that you absolutely have to be a dietitian to work in this field, but having a background in nutrition and dietetics is definitely helpful. It gives you kind of a unique lens to be able to approach this kind of work. And pairing this with something like culinary experience or business experience could be very a lucrative area to get into. I'll also share that athletics is another area that dietitians work in, and they work to enhance the performance of athletes through adequate nutrition. So if you're somebody who's interested in sports or performance, then dietetics is a really great area to be in. And they work with anybody from individuals, athletes who are both amateurs or professionals, or university sports teams, and every professional team, like the Dallas Cowboys, for example, they all have dietitians who work with their team in order to provide them with like the best food to make sure that they're performing at the most optimal level. Culinary nutrition, I thought might be very interesting to you all too. There are actually specific degrees for people who are interested in combining their knowledge of cooking and nutrition. So there's programs at universities like Johnson and Wales, for example, and really people who get degrees in culinary nutrition or who specialize in culinary, they can also have a variety of professions, like being private chefs for individuals, families, or athletes, working at different performance centers, like even the US Olympic Center, and also doing things like recipe development or again, working with food scientists for research and development. And then, of course, there's the opportunity for dietitians to have a private practice. And really, if you have a private practice, you can do any of the above things that we just talked about on their own and consult out their profession, or even have their own host of clients that they work with, and do all of this more intimately under their own administration. And so why are dietitians important? Nutrition is a core component to preventing illness, maintaining good health and healing, and also being the voice of truth in a world where there's a lot of information shared broadly in the media about food and nutrition and what's good for us. So having people who have learned about this very thoroughly in a very professional setting really have an opportunity to be the experts in this field. So all of this just to show that there are a lot of different ways that dietitians can express their expertise and work in the field. So again, it's not just working in hospitals, but just being involved in the food world in general. Dietitians just have a lot of opportunities for themselves. I wanted to share a little bit of statistics about dietitians. Generally speaking, the demographics are not very diverse. Most of dietitians in the field these days are female and white. There is growing diversity in the field, but not as much as there really needs to be. So with only 3% identifying as Black or African American, 5% identifying as Asian, 6% identifying as Hispanic or Latino. And this is really important because dietitians serve a wide variety of people in the community, and this is not reflective of the people that we serve. So the more diverse the field can get, the more we'll better be able to represent and connect with people in the community who would benefit from working with a dietitian. There's a really big push to diversify dietetics right now. So there are a lot of scholarship programs that are available to people and are designed to bring more people from various backgrounds into the field. So this is something that you could look into. I will also say being a Spanish speaker is a really big benefit to this work because so many people speak Spanish, and with most of the dietitians being white and only speaking English, there's a lot of room for growth for people who are Spanish speaking. In terms of compensation, and I'll go over what the requirements of becoming a dietitian are, but I just want to kind of to set expectations here. Dietitians right off the bat do not make a ton of money. This is not necessarily a field that you are going to go into immediately knowing that you're going to make a lot of money. You're not an investment banker or anything like that. So most people who go into the field of dietetics are really doing it because this is an area of passion for them, something that they're very interested in and they believe they can really make a difference. So on average, I pulled this from the official Dietetics board, essentially their professional group, and among all dietitians and all the different positions. So keep in mind, this is taking an average from all the different areas that I went over on the previous slide that dietitians work in. The median salary for people who are working full time is $68,600 per year. So that means that there are people who are making less than that, and there are people who are making more than that. I would say that something that you could expect going into this position, or a position like this as an entry level, you can expect a salary to start at about $50,000. In today's world, that's not necessarily a ton of money, but it's a pretty decent starting place with a lot of room for growth. I also wanted to share that the salary really does depend on a lot of different factors. So what you earn definitely depends on how many qualifications you have, what types of degrees you have, what area you work in, and other factors like how many people you manage. So I put this here at the bottom just to show that people with a doctorate degree tend to make a lot more money than people with a bachelor's and a master's degree. Of course, getting a doctorate degree that's a really big commitment and takes a lot of time, and also requires a lot of money oftentimes to get there. So maybe it takes them a little bit longer to pay off their debt. There's a lot of factors that go into that. Then I wanted to share this table on the right here. And you'll have this presentation available to you afterwards, so you can go ahead and take a closer look. But how much money you make ultimately also depends on which area you work in. So we talked a lot about these different opportunities for dietitians. And in the clinical setting, you can work inpatient, so that's in a hospital working with patients who are, admitted. There's also outpatients, people who come back to visit you pretty regularly in more of an outpatient setting. All of these things where you work really depends on how much money you will make. Or how much money you make depends on where you work. So people who work, you can see that people who work in the consultation and business, so that's really the food industry side, PR, marketing, those types of areas, they will make more money on average than people who work in more of a clinical setting. So just some things to consider. And if you have questions about this, you can definitely reach out to me. And you can also follow this link at the bottom, and it'll give you a more thorough breakdown of all the different factors that play into this. If you're interested in following this kind of a career path, but you're also concerned about making a good living for yourself, then definitely those are some good things to read about. So to become a dietitian is kind of a long road. This is definitely a profession that you do need a pretty rich academic history in. So beginning in 2024, anybody who wants to become a dietitian will have to have a master's degree. So that is for all of you who are currently in high school. When you enter the professional world and you want to be a dietitian, you will have to have a master's degree. Master's degrees often focus on biology, chemistry, nutrition, also community nutrition. So how we learn and engage with food in more of our everyday environment, and also food service. So restaurant management, food service operations, and things like that. After you get a master's degree, there's a couple of different ways you could go about doing this, but a dietetic internship is also required. And what a dietetic internship is essentially it's 1,200 hours of hands-on experience under supervision of another licensed professional. So usually under the supervision of a different dietitian who has already been working in the field for a while. So it's really hands-on learning, which is really wonderful. Internships are a really great experience, but they are unpaid. And this is an additional 1,200 hours after your master's degree. So it's essentially another 8 months if you do it full time. And just in the internship, there's different areas. If you know very much that you are interested in clinical, there are opportunities to do internships that are just clinical, or there are ones that are more diverse, where you get some experience with food service, some experience with public health, and some with clinical. So there's a lot of different options out there, but just know that an internship is required. And then once you complete the internship and have it all recorded and validated, then you are allowed, then you're qualified to sit for the registration exam. So this is an exam that you have to take. It is a 2.5-hour test with pretty much tests all your knowledge about all the different areas that you could work in as a dietitian. And you have to have a passing grade on that. And only after you do your schooling, finish your internship and take the exam, then you get the credentials of being a registered dietitian. Some states on top of that also require additional licensure. So that you don't have to take another test to do that, but it is actually another fee that you have to pay. That's kind of one level further of proving that you've been through this entire process and that you're credentialed to work and you're a trusted professional in the field. Then after all that is said and done, every 5 years, registered dietitians are required to do continuing education. So 75 hours of continuing education every 5 years. So it is pretty big commitment. It's a lot of work. It's a big financial commitment, but it could also be a very rewarding, very interesting field if this is something that you're interested in. I just want to share that given all of the things that dietitians have to go through in order to become a registered dietitian, the credentials really matter to this profession. So you'll see that if you keep going down this field, you'll see that people who are dietitians are very concerned about being called dietitians and not just nutritionists. And the differentiation is that all dietitians are nutrition experts, but not all nutritionists are registered dietitians. So somebody who considers themselves a nutritionist hasn't necessarily gone through all of the schooling and all of the criteria to become this professional. So the credentials count. I just want to share this. There's also an opportunity to be a nutrition and dietetic technician, which is very similar to a dietitian, except for that there's much less criteria in order to get there. So you still study nutrition, you still get the hands-on supervision and take a test, but it's just not quite as demanding. And a lot of jobs that are available to dietitians are available to NDTRs, but oftentimes they might not make as much money. They often won't have as much independence and might have to actually work underneath a dietitian too. So if you're interested in this field, but not necessarily going all the way through to becoming a dietitian, this is one area that you could consider as well. So I wanted to share a little bit because I know when I was going through school and thinking about what I wanted to be growing up and moving forward in academics, it's always really helpful to see how other people landed at their career and kind of what their path to get there was. Because sometimes it can seem like, oh, it's so easy. You just go to school, you get this degree, and then you're done and your life is set for you. You're going to get a paycheck every week. But really, everybody's story is different, and everybody's experiences build up to their own story, and your unique story is what's going to ultimately lead to your success. So my path to dietetics, how I became interested in this is that when I was in high school, I had a personal journey with nutrition and health where I learned that that the food that I chose was really important to how it made me feel. So when I started changing my diet and paying attention to how food was impacting how I felt every day, both in my physical energy and my mental state, I just started getting so interested in it. I started going to the grocery store with my mom, started reading all the ingredients and paying attention to the nuances of all the food. And I just got really interested in it. So I was feeling better emotionally and physically, but I also was learning so much about something that we engage with 3 times a day or more if you're a snacker like I am. So I started just to get really interested in food that way. This was also happening at the same time that I was that I happened to be traveling a lot with my family and with my friends. And so I just knew how important food was in people's cultures and in your experience. So thinking about, going out to lunch with your friends and how many memories were made on, your lunch hour at school, or going and traveling and sitting in a new restaurant, trying new foods, or visiting family abroad and seeing how different traditions were expressed through food. So all of this, I just started to really realize how fun food was, how important it was for our health, and just the different ways that it exposed itself in the world. And so I actually had the privilege of taking a gap year between high school and college. Luckily, I don't know how, but I convinced my parents that I was trustworthy enough to do so. And at this point in my life, I was, graduated high school. I thought, oh, I'm going to go on to school and become a doctor. I wanted to go study medicine, save the world, save people. And so when I took a gap year, I sought out volunteer opportunities that I thought would bring light to some of these passions that I had. So I volunteered as a medic for a nonprofit ambulance service. And it was actually so interesting because it was something that I thought I would really, really love to do. But when I spent so much time in the ambulance and in the hospital and took all these classes in order to become a first aid responder, I realized that actually working in that setting was not necessarily right for me. It was a little too stressful for me. It was too fast paced in a way that I didn't feel like I was, really going to be able to make a difference with people. And I just didn't really like being in a hospital at the end of the day. But that experience was really eye-opening for me and showed and kind of helped guide me in college so that I wasn't necessarily taking classes that I thought I should take just because it fulfilled my high school goal of becoming a doctor. But then I also did some other experiences, because sharing about how interested I got in food and culture, I volunteered on farms. So you can see me in the middle at the top. I'm holding a little baby goat, and I actually lived right next to the goats too. And this was just such an interesting, they had animals and then they also had vegetables. This farm on the bottom right corner is the tomato greenhouse. I worked in there too, and just having a hands-on experience with food and growing it and harvesting it and cleaning up after the animals and milking the goats. All of this just really helped bring the food industry to life for me. It showed me where my food came from, how much care goes into raising food, what fresh food right off the vine actually tastes like. And it just really emphasized my interest of food and agriculture and just the industry as a whole. So my point here is that you don't really need to know what you want to be exactly out of high school. It's great to have interests and passions and maybe some goals that you might set for yourself. But ultimately, the best thing that you could do is to follow your interests and your curiosities. And the more interested you are in something, the easier it is to learn it and become an expert in it. And ultimately, that's what's going to drive your success. So seek out opportunities that really meet your interests. So then I went on to school. I went to the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and I kind of following up on all the interests that I developed over my gap year, which was traveling and health and food. I pursued a bachelor's degree in international studies and had a minor in environmental studies. And so when you go to school, look for classes and clubs that are really related to your interests. Those are great places to meet upperclassmen, to meet teachers who might have insights that you might not be exposed to yet. So that's my suggestion there. And in my undergraduate studies, I didn't know exactly what I wanted to be still at this point, but I knew that I was interested in culture. I was interested in the intersection of health and food and the environment. And so I just really sought out classes that that taught me all about that. And I feel that it gave me a really kind of good foundation for being able to move forward. I was also part of a club called GlobeMed, which was a global health club. So again, kind of seeking out, I didn't end up working in global health, but seeking out those types of opportunities are just really important to kind of broaden your horizons and have you meet people. After college, I went on and then pursued more hands-on learning because I really am a firm believer in getting hands-on learning experiences. So anytime you have an opportunity to do that, definitely take it. Maybe it won't pay you, maybe it's a volunteer experience, maybe they will pay you, but you might think that it's pushing you behind for getting an actual job, but really any hands-on learning experience you can get will really, really benefit you. So I had the opportunity to go live on a dairy farm. And I actually was not doing nutrition there, but I was studying how the technology on a dairy farm can further improve the food system. So how can new technology make for more efficient farming? How could it make for a better or a safer food supply? And so all of these things, like, again, it wasn't exactly related to what I thought I wanted to do, or I didn't even exactly know what I wanted to do, but it just continued to build depth and knowledge around this general field for me. And so for me, this actually, little did I know that I would later be working for the Dairy Council, but for me, it gave me a really great introduction to the world of dairy and agriculture, and helped shape my passion for food and public health in a way that I didn't realize. So it was just another way to build a connection in this area. So after that, and after kind of sitting on all the experiences that I had, I decided that going and getting a master's degree in public health was the right route for me. All of my experiences led me to have a strong passion for preventing illness in the first place. So really keeping people healthy through good food and education, and a stronger food system. And so public health was really my way of kind of synthesizing all of that information. And knowing that I still was focused on nutrition and food, I wanted to get to focus on nutritional sciences. I also know that I am an in-depth learner, so that if I wanted to go out there and talk about food and nutrition, I felt that for me, it was really important to have a very thorough understanding of how food impacts us on a very biological and biological level and molecular level. So I wanted to become a dietitian because it would mean that I would understand how the food is digested, how all the systems are working together. And so that when I talk about if something is good for you or not, I had a really deep understanding of why. So then after I did my master's in public health, I then went on to do the dietetic internship, which I shared as a requirement to become a dietitian. And my dietetic internship was very public health focused. So it had a wide variety of rotations, from working in research, which was here at the bottom. I'm working at the hospital and doing a nutrition intake from a patient who was participating in one of the research endeavors that the school was hosting. I worked at a Feeding America food bank called Food Gatherers in Ann Arbor, and worked in their kitchen and made sure that we were using all the food that was available through donations to make healthy food for people that met their needs in the community, and making sure that we weren't wasting food too. And then I also worked in the food pantries food pantries and community gardens, where we were really teaching people day in and day out in the community how to grow their own food and build a connection between the food that they're eating and the place that they're living. And there's me on the bottom right, very, very happy the day that I passed my dietetic exam. So my first opportunity that I had after graduating, and I became very interested in communications. I love to write. I love to think creatively about how to share really complex information into more kind of digestible pieces of information. And so I found an opportunity to have another internship. This time it was paid and it was not part of my requirements to become a dietitian, but it was an internship at a public relations company. And that company was called Weber Shandwick. They're one of the biggest PR companies in the country, and they're also international. And the general mission of the nutrition team in public relations is to communicate nutrition information on behalf of the clients, but also informing the clients about new research that's happening related to their products, and then also connecting all of that back to consumers, back to people who are buying these products. So I was doing that on behalf of milk, on behalf of the American Pecan Council. Panera Bread was doing a really big push for a whole wheat bread at that time, so I got to be a part of that launch. And then Aldi, the grocery store. So this is just kind of one example of, again, a route that dietitians can pursue as a profession. And Weber Shandwick specifically, they actually hire a lot of dietitians specifically to work on behalf of these accounts, on behalf of their food accounts. And there's some other public relation agencies who also specifically hire dietitians. And I think that this is a growing field. I think that more and more the world of marketing is realizing how much insight dietitians and food experts can really provide to their clients who are so focused on food. And our idea of wellness these days, people are just like more and more excited about products that are good for you and foods that are going to provide some health benefit to us. So dietitians are going to become, I think, more and more important in this area. So where I am now, all of that led me to becoming a program coordinator on the health and wellness team at Dairy Max, which is the local dairy council. So I kind of shared that, I took up an opportunity to work on a farm between high school and college. After college, I had the opportunity to work on a dairy farm. Little did I know that was going to play into my professional role down the line. My internship, after my internship, also I was working on PR for milk, and all of these things you don't really know necessarily, again, where your journey is going to take you. But here I am now working in dairy, and all of those experiences played into my expertise and my knowledge and my ability to excel in this field. So now I am a program coordinator in Colorado, Montana. I'm based in Denver, but I also cover the regions of Montana and Wyoming. And the Dairy Council is really interesting. The Dairy Council, for those of you who are not familiar, we essentially are a group of experts in dairy farming and education and health and wellness and business. And we do a lot of the work to promote the amazing milk that the farmers and their cows produce, because farmers are working every single day, day in and day out, to actually make the milk. And we're here to promote it, to share about all the goodness of it, why milk and dairy is so important as part of a healthy diet, and also just the deliciousness of it all too. So we do the work for the dairy farmers, promoting their product that they just really don't have the opportunity to do. Dairy Max, it represents 8 states. So we represent farmers across 8 states, from Montana all the way down to Texas and Louisiana. There are over 900 dairy farm families that are in our region. And again, they're working 365 days to feed millions of people with a very high quality, nutritious product. I always like to show this map because for people who are interested in dairy, who are interested in nutrition and seeking out dairy councils in their region, that no matter where you are in the country, so even though you're in Texas now, maybe you'll wind up on the East Coast or on the West Coast down the road. And wherever you end up, there is a dairy council that you can reach out to that also employs dietitians. And that you could also reach out to for resources too, or collaborate with in whatever other fields you're working in. Like, again, if you happen to stay in Texas and you are associated with the Texas Restaurant Association, maybe you could work with the Dairy Council down the road that way too. So there is a Dairy Council for every state and region across the country. And the Dairy Council, one kind of component of dairy is the National Dairy Council, and they have just such a long, rich history of providing and supporting nutrition research about how dairy can support long-term health and support the health and growth and development of children. So we have a long history of being involved with national school lunch programs and making sure that children are fed with high quality products. So specifically as a dietitian on the Dairy Council and specifically in Dairy Max, but this is probably pretty similar to what Dairy Council or what dietitians and Dairy Councils in other states do too. Our goal is really to educate the educators about nutrition science as it relates to dairy and dairy's place in the diet. So again, there's so much nutrition research always coming out. There's new things hitting the journals every day. And so it's really important that dietitians stay on top of the latest recommendations and the latest research and communicate that to other healthcare professionals so that this information is getting shared in an accurate way. Another really important part of being a dietitian in the Dairy Council is connecting healthcare professionals and also consumers back to the farmers. So what I learned through my volunteer experiences and hands-on experiences over the years is that in order to be the best expert in food and nutrition that you could be, you really have to have a thorough understanding of where your food comes from. I think that it's so important in really building that relationship and also highlighting to consumers every day that there are farmers who are working so hard to make this food. Food doesn't just fall out of the sky. It comes from somewhere, and it's all interconnected to our environment and to policy. So we really like to connect our healthcare professionals and consumers back to the farmers and strengthen that relationship. And then, of course, to communicate as a subject matter expert on commonly asked questions about dairy. There is a lot of misinformation out there about dairy, about really food, any type of food. I've seen broccoli be called like a carcinogen. So there's just so much misinformation out there about what's good for us and what's not good for us. And as dietitians, food experts who work so hard to understand this stuff on a very detailed level, it's our responsibility to go out there and be the voice of truth and kind of walk people back off the ledge, also correct people and make sure that that only accurate information is getting shared out there and honestly help people build a healthier relationship with food and not be scared of the food but instead find enjoyment and trust in food. This is just a couple of examples of the different things that dietitians do as part of the Dairy Council, what I do at Dairy Max. So again, connecting people back to the farm, we take groups of students and doctors to farms and give them a tour of the facilities, have them meet the cows, have them meet the farmers, ask any questions that they have. And this is usually, for me, this has been one of the most rewarding things about working for the Dairy Council. Is just so many people have these aha moments when they're able to go to the farm and see the way that things actually operate and meet the farmer who produces their food. These are just such wonderful experiences. And culinary experiences is another great opportunity. I don't know if I really mentioned this beforehand, but so much of being a dietitian, obviously everything we talk about is food. And so helping people learn how to make food. So helping people learn how to cook is usually a really big part, especially in one-on-one consultations. One of the biggest things that we can do for people is make them feel more comfortable in the kitchen. Make sure that they know how to do the basics of cooking, because if they can't prepare their own food or really know how to navigate food preparation in any sense, then they can't really sustain healthy food behaviors, because people need to be able to be independent when it comes to preparing food and know kind of just the basics around that. So culinary experiences are really, really important. And especially around culinary nutrition, the more that we can educate healthcare providers about feeling good and comfortable with cooking and just showing how important cooking is on a day-to-day basis, then doctors will then see how much of an impact it can make in their lives, and then be the messengers back to patients and share also how important cooking and food is in their life. So we like to have as many fun cooking culinary experiences as possible. And of course, we go to conferences too, and provide presentations about the latest research, and try to share information that way. Lastly, this is just kind of my plug again for how important dietitians are in the field of agriculture. So dietitians working in agriculture is another field that you can work in, whether it's with the Dairy Council, whether it's with the Beef Council. A lot of dietitians work, for avocados, for avocado farmers, or for like the American Pecan Council. So really just the connection of dietitians and agriculture is so important, because we have a growing population of people. We have a limited amount of resources, but ultimately we need to be producing food in a sustainable way that is high quality, that is nutrient dense, and that will sustain healthy life and a healthy society for people. So that dietitians have a very, very unique opportunity to be the bridge between people who are buying food in the grocery store and people who are growing food on the farms. And because of where we're situated and the things that we study and what we're interested in, we're a great connecting point between all of these different areas. And I think that it's very important that we have food advocates working both for consumers and everyday eaters, so to speak, and the farmers who are working so hard to actually put the food on the shelves. So if you are interested in agriculture and dietetics, I do recommend, if you have an opportunity to volunteer on a farm or visit a farm. It could be an urban farm, it could be a community garden, really anything like that. Those are really great ways to get that hands-on experience and see the connection before your eyes.
Danielle, I just wanted to mention we have a couple of questions before we close and you get to your final slides. One question was, going back to when you were a student, what would you tell yourself at that, now that you've found your path? What is some advice you would have given to yourself to focus on in regards to what skills you use every day?
That's a great question. I think I would really go back to the idea that to follow things that are interesting to you. So to not necessarily just take classes because you absolutely think that you're going to need to take it or whatever. Of course, it's good to have the foresight that if you truly have an end goal, you want to make sure that you're also getting there efficiently. But to really listen to yourself and find things that you're interested in, because in high school, I saw people who were, so interested in just like computer games and things like that. And you think like, oh, what are they going to do with that growing up? But ultimately it led to them becoming masters of computer science and gaming and programming. And because they're so interested in it, like same with you and same for me, if I am so interested in food and cooking and farming and all of that, the more experiences that you seek out and the more you just trust that your interest is going to lead you to more easily learn things, it's going to provide such a depth of like richness for your professional career down the road. And the money will come later. Your success will follow based on how committed you are to whatever you're doing.
So the continued advice of find what you love to do and you'll make a living doing it and be happy in your career and your life. That's great. Another question was, what is the biggest dairy misconception that you hear in your line of work?
Sure. Well, there are definitely a few that stick out to me, specifically from a dietetics standpoint. Something that you hear is that, let's just say, like one of the things, for example, is that dairy causes disease. So dairy causes chronic diseases. People think that it's not good for you. I hear that, dairy, you're not meant to drink dairy. It could cause chronic diseases down the road or inflammation. And that is very troublesome for a dietitian to hear, because we know that dairy is an incredibly nutrient dense source of food. And so people hear these kinds of myths and their first instinct is to take dairy out of their diet. And they think that they're doing it for a health reason. But ultimately what's happening is that people are taking out a massive source of nutrition in their diet. Dairy is super nutrient dense and one of the greatest sources of 13 essential nutrients in our diet. And so when people take that out and replace it with different types of plant alternatives, they're not realizing how many nutrients they're misplacing and not getting back. So for that, that's very concerning, because they're just missing out on so many health benefits. And then also there's just tons of research now, and more of the research is only getting stronger, that consuming dairy and milk and yogurt is really healthy and can help prevent so many chronic diseases. And an area that I would really, anybody who's really interested in learning yogurt is a great example. I mean, the health benefits of yogurt, especially as it relates to our gut microbiome and immunity, all of these things, the science is just really exploding right now. And dairy is really linked to a lower risk of many different chronic diseases.
Thank you. That does clear up a lot. Wait, not everything you read on the internet is true, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I'm sorry if you want to continue with your slides. I just wanted to get to those questions.
Oh, no, thank you so much. And I just have this slide and one more, and then be happy to take any other questions too. And this last slide is really just kind of different ways that you can get involved if this is something that you're interested in. So there are every college, every community college, every university, they will have student nutrition and dietetics organizations. So there are different clubs that you can join. Every city and state also has organizations that you can join. The Texas Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics is a really big one, and they have tons of resources and mentors that you can get connected to. There are also school gardens. A lot of elementary schools, a lot of middle schools, also universities have campus farms. These are different kinds of ways that you can get, again, like learning about the connection between growing food and nutrition is a great way to get involved. Volunteer work is, again, another great way. Volunteering at food pantries or at community kitchens, where like soup kitchens. Those are great ways to see what an impact nutrition can have on the greater community and learn about food access and kind of breaking down barriers to getting healthy food. Food service jobs. So that's not necessarily like something that people really give a lot of praise to, but I have had so many food service jobs, and it is so important, especially for all those of you who are, interested in cooking too, working as a line cook, working as a barista, working honestly in any way, shape, or form in the food service. Those types of jobs will give you tremendous insight into how the industry works and how challenging the industry is. It gives you a lot of respect for going to restaurants later in your life. This is just really, really important work, I think, for anybody who's interested in the field. Working in sustainability, so learning about the environment, learning about agricultural practices, Thinking about cultural connections for food, I will say this is an area that is getting more and more attention as well. So we are recognizing more and more that food is not just about what's on our plate, but what is actually relevant to people's background. So as dietitians, you have to be really sensitive to the fact that you can't just recommend, something that you think is healthy, but to somebody's cultural background or religious background has no relevance to their life whatsoever. Food is only healthy if you eat it, and people will only eat it if it tastes good to them and if it meets their personality and meets their family's background too. So these cultural connections to food are super important. And as the field tries to become more and more diverse, this is just super important. So just thinking about that, even in your day-to-day life, like meeting your friends, going to friends' houses or families' houses for dinner, just kind of paying attention and asking people about what kind of foods their family grew up eating, or even asking your parents or your aunts and uncles about what they ate growing up. These are all ways that you can really start to continue to understand how food ties into people's lives. Culinary experience, going to farmers markets and just kind of meeting farmers and seeing what's local to your area. All of these are just great ideas of ways to get involved and continue enhancing your connection to food.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are there any other questions?
And I don't think we have any other questions at this time. If we do, we'll definitely forward them to Gretchen and to get to you for answering. And I see your list of resources here. Before we close today, I wanted to say thank you so much for your sharing your path and sharing your absolute passion for the industry. Farm to table is so important, and I'm glad to see that it is getting a resurgence, and our young people in school are listening to the advice of people such as yourself to find out what you're putting in your body and why it matters. So I really, really appreciate your path and sharing all of your information with us. I know everyone was helpful for them. Gretchen, did you have any final comments before we close for the day?
No, I think Danielle did a great job, and just thanks for having us.
She did a great job. So here are a few resources. Everybody that's listening, this has been recorded, so it will be showing up on our website, and Haley will be getting this link to all of our programs throughout the state as well. Please join us on December 1st for our next Classroom to Career, which will feature the Texas Farm Bureau and True Harvest. So we're going to continue with this theme that the Dairy Max group has shared with us, farm to table and knowing where your food comes from. If anyone has any other questions, let me look down in the chat box real quick. Nope, I think that's it. Great sharing, great story. Thank you so much, Danielle and Gretchen.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Goodbye.